Hello there, young people. Today we are having our second lesson of our two-week unit on text evidence. This is lesson 2, and if you were not able to attend our class's lesson, then please just review this video so you make sure you understand what we did and can complete the assignments for the week. All right, so quick review. This presentation, by the way, is posted for you in Google Classroom, so you can use it at any time. But in Google Classroom, you'll find the first slide of this presentation contains a link to the document that you guys created last week with Ms. Tosh. So if you click on that, it'll take you right to that doc you guys created where you came up with some steps for citing evidence. And also you have a great list of sentence starters to use. So we talked about how when you're citing evidence, you have to make sure you name the title and the author while also restating the question. You of course want to make sure you find the exact evidence you want to use, and then you want to include a sentence starter so you introduce the quote. And you've got a great list right here. For example, it says according to the text, or the text states, or based on the reading, I know. You've got a nice list here that you can use. After that, you put quotations around any direct quotes. So anytime that you're quoting the text directly as the author wrote it, you have to make sure you put it in quotation marks. If you don't do that, then that's considered plagiarism, which is sort of like stealing someone else's ideas. If you don't want to use a direct quote the way it's written by the author, you can do something called paraphrasing it, which is where you say what the author said, but you put it in your own words. When I think about paraphrasing, I like to use a little rhyme. I say, change the words, change the order, make it shorter. So if that helps you, you can do that instead. So find the evidence you want to use, then change the words, change the order, make it shorter. What you don't want to change is the meaning. You want to keep the author's meaning there. So then you have some example responses you guys came up with. So this is a really great resource that you want to go back to and use to help you as you work on things. So in addition, I've got over here a list of some examples of text evidence, and then over here I've got a clickable link, a picture of some ice cubes. And the reason for that is that there's an acronym you can use to help when you're introducing quotes, and it's the word ICE. And the I stands for introduce, the C stands for cite, and the E stands for explain or elaborate. So that can be really useful when you're trying to make sure your quotes are inserted into your text so that they make sense. Otherwise, sometimes it can feel like you're just airdropping a piece of text evidence with no context, and that's not going to make it very easy for your reader to understand. So when you open this presentation, click on that link and see the little graphic that'll pop up about the ICE acronym. So the best way to get better at finding and citing text evidence is practice. So we're going to do some practicing today. If you were in the live class, awesome. Even if you weren't and you want to just kind of review, that's fine. You're welcome to be here. So practicing is going to really help us. So today we're going to practice in 3 ways. First, we're going to practice kind of going backwards. Sometimes it helps to look at text evidence in a backwards way. So instead of figuring out what evidence we need, we're actually going to read a passage and figure out if we can use the evidence to tell us who the speaker is in the passage. Then we're going to just practice finding really good evidence for a point or a claim. And then last of all, we're going to do a little review game. If you were not able to attend the class, I'll include the link to the GimKit game that we played so you can use it to practice. All right, so here's our first activity. It's called Going Backwards. Now, when you click on this link, it's going to tell you to make a copy of the doc. So you'll have to make a copy and it'll be your own so that you can use it and refer to it in practice. So we'll take a look at the first one together now, and then you can practice on your own. You definitely don't have to do all of these. It's totally up to you how many of them you do to practice, but the more you do, the better off you'll be because practice makes awesome. So here's our first example. And what you're doing is you're going to start by putting your name right in here where it says student name. So for me, let's pretend my name is Susie Snowflake. I'm going to put my name, you're going to put your actual name, and then we're going to read the passage, and I'm going to look down here to make sure I know what I need to do before I start. So it looks like I'm going to have to decide who is the speaker of the passage. I'm going to highlight the evidence in the text that supports my answer, and then I'm going to put that evidence into my own words below in complete sentences. All right, so let's read it first. So we have, a freezing wind shook my branch, causing a terrible tremor to knock me this way and that. I clung to the branch as tightly as I could, even after some of the other leaves gave up. They fluttered to the ground in a falling spiral before landing on the cold, hard dirt below. For weeks the temperature had begun to drop, and brightly colored leaves all around had begun to fade into the dull yellows and muted oranges of autumn. The sun's warmth didn't reach down through the treetops the way it had only a few weeks ago. Now, with another gust of wind building up around my tree, I knew that it was time. I wouldn't be able to hold on any more. Instead, I let my stem go, drifting upward for a few seconds on the current. It carried me higher than the top of my tree, spinning me around and showing me the whole valley before fizzling out. Without the wind to hold me up, I glided away from my tree, landing on an icy stream and floating atop the rushing water. I sailed past a forest of bare trees, their leaves long gone. Splashes of red and orange lined the river bank. Soon I was plucked from the cold water by a hard black beak. A mockingbird carried me to her nest, placed me in the twiggy bottom, and settled on top of me to get ready for winter. Okay, so I think most of us can probably tell who or what the narrator is in this text. But let's go back and figure out how we know. So back in that first paragraph, it says, "A freezing wind shook my branch." I think the words "my branch" kind of are good hints to us that this is something related to a tree. So I'm going to highlight "my branch." Then it says, "Causing a terrible tremor to knock me this way and that. I clung to the branch as tightly as I could." So it's something that can cling to a branch. Then it says, "Even after some of the other leaves gave up." That's a key part, because if this writer is talking about the other leaves, what does that tell us about the writer? That they're probably also a leaf. So that's a really big hint that we're probably talking from the perspective of a leaf. Then we come down here and it says, "With another gust of wind building up around my tree." So the leaf's been talking about my tree and my branches. It makes you think like this is a part of the tree. And then it says, "I let my stem go, drifting upward for a few seconds on the current." So that makes me think, okay, so it has a stem, it's part of a tree. It said the other leaves. It seems like we've got a pretty good idea here of what it is. The last part that I would highlight, because it seems especially telling, is at the end when it says, "A mockingbird carried me to her nest, placed me in the twiggy bottom, and settled on top of me to get ready for winter." I don't think there are quite that many things that a bird would want to sit on top of, and a leaf is a great example of something. So here where it says, "Who is the speaker of the passage?" I'm going to say the speaker of the passage is a leaf falling from a tree. And then I've highlighted the evidence. Now down here, I want to put that evidence into my own words. So I might say something like, "The speaker of this passage is a leaf falling from a tree." And this is where we can start practicing the skills that you learned with Mrs. Tosh last week, where you talked about how to actually cite your evidence. You could say, "According to the text," and then let's see. Well, maybe before I say "according to the text," let's say the speaker refers to my tree and my branch, which makes it clear that the speaker is a part of the tree. So that's important. Then I can say later on, the speaker talks about the other leaves, which suggests that the speaker is also a leaf. Later in the text, the speaker talks about floating through the air, landing in a river bank, and then being picked up by a bird. These are all, I don't want to use the word things, as some of you have discovered. I hate the word things in writing. So these are all situations that a leaf might encounter. All right, so that's how you would do this. So this is the one we practiced together, but you've got 9 more practices that you can use here. And I've included all the answers at the end of the slide presentation, so you can go in and check and see if you did it properly. So doing this is a really good way to kind of look at evidence from backwards and to help yourself to understand what are the most important pieces of information that get me to the conclusion I'm trying to get to, that help me to figure out who the speaker is. Because sometimes it's tempting when you're looking for evidence to just pick a big giant chunk to support your point or to highlight the entire thing. We get highlighter happy. We don't want that. We want to be really particular about what pieces of evidence we're using to support our claims. So this is a good way to practice that backwards. All right, so that's what we did during the lesson today. We worked on some of those, and I would encourage you to maybe practice at least 3 of them on your own and then go back and consult the answers to make sure you're doing it properly. Okay, so the next practice we worked on is finding the best evidence. So as I was saying, sometimes we get a little quote happy and we like to use really big chunks of text to support our conclusions. And that's not really effective because that sort of says to me as the teacher, I read it and I'm like, I don't think that Samara knew what was the most important evidence. So she just highlighted the whole paragraph or she copied and pasted the whole paragraph. So instead of that, I want to feel like, oh, wow, Samara really picked the perfect piece of evidence to support what she was saying. So to practice that, I've got another doc for you. And once again, it's going to force you to make a copy. So please do that. And then we're going to do the first one together, and then you can do some practicing, and I included the answers for these as well. So this one, you're going to first you read the instructions, make sure you understand them because they're important. So the instructions say, highlight the most compelling evidence. So not all the evidence, the most compelling, the most convincing, most relevant evidence from the text to support the inference that, and then it tells you what you're looking to argue. This is really important. That's why I put it in italics. So this one says, highlight the most compelling evidence from the text to support the inference that Swan Island will need to find another way to pay for its hospital. So I'm going to pretend in my head right now that I'm writing an article about how Swan Island needs to pay for its hospital in a different way. So as I read this passage, I want to be thinking about evidence to support that claim, that Swan Island needs to pay for its hospital in another way. All right, so let's read the text. It says, 5 years ago, Swan Islanders made a big decision. We voted to add toll booths to the island's only bridge. The reasoning was simple. The money earned would pay for the construction of a hospital. So quick pause. Now I know that 5 years ago, the way they decided to pay for this hospital was with a toll booth. And what we're looking for is evidence that they need to find a different way to do it. Let's keep reading. Currently, residents must travel to the hospital on the mainland. Swan Island is legendary for having the best beaches in the region. Recent figures, however, show that this has been the worst 5-year stretch for beach traffic in Swan Island's history. In addition, several local businesses have closed in recent years. Meanwhile, other beach towns in the region are thriving. Many have seen recent increases in traffic and revenue. Interesting. Okay, so why would we want to come up with a different way to pay for the Swan Island Hospital? I can tell you right now, if I live on Swan Island and we've had the worst 5-year stretch for beach traffic in the history, that's a problem. So I'm going to highlight that because that's clearly useful evidence here. So I'm going to look for, let's see, recent figures. And I also want to make sure I highlight the part about the toll booths because I want to make sure I know that that's what they've been doing to make money so far. That's the thing that's not working. Another big problem is down here where it says several local businesses have closed in recent years. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's because nobody's going to the beach towns. But the next sentence says other beach towns in the region are thriving. So it seems like maybe the toll booth plan is not working. So now that I've highlighted this evidence to support this very specific inference, I'm going to come down here and I want to put it into a nice sentence. And I'm going to start by sort of restating that inference. So I'm going to say something like, Swan Island needs to come up with an alternative way to pay for its hospital. And then we can say something, we're going to give a little context. So 5 years ago, Swan Islanders built or installed toll booths across the bridge to the island to make money for the hospital. And then we're going to say, unfortunately, since the toll booths have been installed, the number of people coming to the island has gone way down, and some businesses, or some Swan Island businesses have had to close. It is clear that the people of Swan Island need to figure out a new plan. Okay, so I've basically taken all this evidence here and I've put it in my own words down here and explained. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, I just want to use quotes just like they come from the text. You can do that, but you have to make sure you put them in quotation marks. So another way I could do this is I could say something like, Swan Islanders need to find a new way to pay for their hospital. According to the text, let's see, the Islanders installed toll booths to bring in money. But, and this is where I could put a quote, I could say, figures, but this has been the worst 5-year stretch for beach traffic in Swan Island's history. So that's taken directly from the text. So note that everything I took directly from the text is put in quotation marks. That is so important because it's not really my words, it's someone else's words. Then it could say, businesses on Swan Island have had to close, but some of the nearby beach towns are, and I'm going to say, thriving. And I'm not putting that word, I'm putting that word in quotes because I took it straight from the text right up here. So, but some of the nearby beach towns are thriving. This suggests that Swan Islander needs to come up with a new plan. Okay, so these are both options that you could use, one of which includes direct quotes from the text, the other is paraphrased quotes. So basically they both contain text evidence, but in this case I paraphrased it. I put it in my own words. In this example, I took direct text quotes. Both are correct, but if you're using direct quotes, you must put them in quotation marks. Okay, so that's the practice example. Just like with the last exercise, there are, in this case, 11, I believe, different practice cards you can do. So I would aim to do at least 3 of them to really get your skills down, and then you can go and consult the answer the answer document, which I put into the slideshow, and you can check your answers. The more practice you do, the better you'll be at this. So it's a really good way to make sure you've got your skills down. Try and when you're highlighting evidence, try and highlight as little as possible while not sacrificing the important evidence. So try not to be the person who highlights this entire paragraph. Because yeah, you could argue that everything in this paragraph matters, because it all does matter, but you're looking for the most useful evidence to support the inference in the question. So make sure you're actually looking with each text. So the next one, task 2, says highlight the most compelling evidence from the text to support the inference that giraffes are herbivores. So everything you highlight should be direct, really relevant evidence that shows that giraffes are herbivores. Okay, so you can work on that to practice a little bit more. I highly recommend it. Now, the last thing we're doing in the group class is we're going to do a little game where we're going to play on Gimkit. And since you missed the actual class, most likely you won't be able to play it with the rest of the group, but I will provide you with the link as a practice homework task so you can work on it there and play along. All right, if you need more practice or more help, remember Mrs. Tosh will be available on Wednesday for office hours during the same hour of time that you have live class on Mondays. So that's for 9 to 10 a.m. for incoming 7th graders, 10 to 11 for incoming 8th graders, and 11 to 12 for incoming 6th graders. All right, I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon. All right, have a great day. Bye.